All right, Adam, moving into your topic. What's your topic?
Yeah. I thought we just have a nice little chat about storytelling in video games. I
Let's
think
go.
I think it, I'm kind of like half inspired. I don't remember you shared like a video with us that was on like someone tweeted about it was like in response to criticism that like video games like don't have stories or something like that, and it's just
Oh,
like
okay.
this
Yeah, yeah.
super cut of all these fantastic story moments from I
Yes,
think it was
yes.
was it all PlayStation games? It was or was it other stuff
About
too?
80% of them were PlayStation games.
It was like 80, yeah, and it's crazy because I know other people have been doing it well too. Like, there's lots of great stories, like, on the non, AAA level, through lots of indies that are, like, have heartfelt stories to them, stuff like that, and it's worth bringing up again and talking about more, because I think that misconception is honestly still out there, about just video games, aren't the medium that we go to for storytelling, and that's like just not true anymore, or it doesn't have to be true anymore. There's plenty
Right.
of stuff that people could come to for stories out there. So I thought we'd chat a little bit. I'd love to hear about some of the video game stories that you love a lot, maybe some of the ones that didn't land super well, and like maybe why that is and what could have been done differently. So, um, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot,
Please
tell me
go for
about
it.
tell me about one of your favorite video game stories.
So I love this topic a lot. I just real quick to start it all off. I agree with you. I think video games have very much so evolved so much over time, and it's one of those things where and when you look at my list, like what I've been playing recently,
Mhm.
I played a lot of online games. I'm not usually always that kind of person. I usually play a lot of online games when I'm in a moment where I'm like I'm tired and I just want to hang out with my brothers and connect with somebody or hang out with friends, and then that's what I do. But when it comes to storytelling, and you get those games that really tell a good story, it's
Mhm.
kind of unmatched at times, and that experience is not matched. I love movies. I'm a huge movie goer. I when the movie theaters open back up, man, I've been going every week so far just to go see
Yeah.
whatever's coming out. And I love stories. That's been my big thing. And I wrote some things down right here in regards to certain stories, but I want to make it known. The first game that really did it for me, the first game I ever played, the first game I ever saw, the first game I ever went to a store and bought, which I didn't technically buy, I was with my dad when he bought it. That whole experience was Metal Gear Solid 1.
Mm.
And that game set the precedent for me that once I went on it and played other stuff, I was like, it's not like I started with Mario and
Mhm.
then moved my way. I'm when I say move my way up, I don't mean in regards to better. I mean in regards to the fact that pulling a story out of it, I didn't evolve to Metal Gear. It wasn't like I was playing a bunch of kid games and then moved my way to Metal Gear. Like I just started at Metal Gear, and
Mhm.
the fact that that was what I thought it was a movie. I felt like it was so cinematic. David Hayter, which is the voice of Solid Snake, is the first voice actor I ever knew because when the game starts, it shows like his name for his as an actor right next to Solid Snake. So I was aware of all these other people in regards to this game as actors, and I was like, is this how games are? Like,
Mhm.
this is what video games are. And that kind of set it for me from there on out. And the story of Metal Gear, and some can criticize and say it gets complicated. It does get complicated over time. But I think a lot of the games that we have now would not have been here if it wasn't for Metal Gear. I don't think we would get at The Last of Us if it
Mm.
wasn't for Metal Gear. And so it really pushed the storytelling element to that point. And I hear a bunch of people who were much older than I was at that moment, and they were kind of were giving up on games, played Metal Gear, and they're like, "Oh, this is you could do way more with this." And
Yeah.
so Metal Gear Solid is just one of those where, for me, like it was also to the point where I don't even know if movies at the time were doing end credit scenes. This game had an end credit scene. And so you play the game, you would sit through, and I remember I remember I saw my dad play when I was a kid. I played it a little bit when
Mhm.
I was a kid, and then I would have to say 10 years later, we had a PS2, completely outside of the time frame of when it came out, but had a PS2. Then I
Yeah.
remember I bought the Metal Gear Solid, a Metal Gear Solid collection, which had number one, two, and three for the PS2. And so I remember I bought it, and me and my brother we sat down and we just played that game all the way
Mm.
through. We didn't stop. And then I remember when it was finished, just laying there and just hearing the music. And then once it got to the very end, you just hear the "Fring," and then whatever the end credit scene is. And then I remember looking at him and we're like, wait. How long has that been there? Like, that's been there this whole time? Like, I never knew that was there. And so, yeah, Metal Gear for sure has, for me, really made a huge mark. And it's kind of made me like I've always growing up.
Mhm.
I've always wanted to write stories. Why? Because of Metal Gear. I've always wanted to
Mhm.
direct stuff. Why? Because of Hideo Kojima with Metal Gear. I want to make games. Like my big thing right now in life is I want to make. I love doing YouTube and talking and podcasting. And my big thing aside with that is to make a video game. Why? Because of Metal Gear. So
Mm.
that's my first one.
Dude, that's awesome. I think it took me so much longer to experience a game that really put stock in
Yeah.
storytelling. I mean, of course, I grew up, I played a ton of, like, platformers, so, of course, you got Mario, like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and then even moving on to, like, the PlayStation 2 era. There w I'm sure there were games that had stories, but, or, like, they obviously they had plots, right, which is part of storytelling, but it's only, like, one facet of it. But, it wasn't even, like, way later that I have a game that I really remember the storytelling of until I played Celeste,
Mm,
which, indie game, made just by, a handful of people. It's a 2D platformer, um, and I'm gonna sidebar real quick. So,
go for it.
obviously, I know there's probably plenty of listeners who it's been a while since you took a high school English class, It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
So, like, storytelling, when we talk about it, there's lots of different elements that go into it. Obviously, the plot, like, what's actually going on, you know, Bowser came and he stole Princess Peach, and now we're gotta go off to save her, right? So that like you know plot and that whole journey, right?
Right.
But you got your characters, what's going on with the characters, what happens with them, the setting, the point of view, style, theme, and then literary devices, which is just like 100 million different things. And so you come to a game like Celeste, which, on its face, it's 2D platformer, it's level based, but it takes more thought and energy towards setting up its premise than just the typical, hey, like I said, Bowser, this lizard turtle being that rules over other turtles and
Yeah.
I don't know, living mushroom people came and stole a princess and now plumber person is going to attack it's like
Yeah.
it's just so fantastical in that way. And Celeste's premise is there's this girl, uh Madeline, and she is going to go climb this mountain, right? And that's the premise. It's she has lots of self doubt. She's doing this to like prove to herself that she can do it, and just throughout her journey, and she has like crippling like anxiety attacks and panic attacks and stuff like that.
Mm, mm,
In addition to like the self doubt, and so even from just the get-go, the premise and the setup of this is like a relatable human story.
right.
Like this is straight up an allegory. She's going to climb a big mountain, right? In real life, we, have mountains that we have to climb and we doubt ourselves to do it. And we have to
Yeah.
fight against like that doubt and the anxiety. And in the game, she literally has to like go up against a version of herself, which people call Battleline, which is the embodiment of her self doubt and her anxiety in a lot of ways. And so, the whole game is about the story of her tempting to climb the mountain, having to reconcile with herself like, these feelings, even though I'm at odds with them, ultimately are a part of me and come from me, and I have to learn how to live with that in a way that like helps me actually achieve my goals and get me to the end. And like there's so many other characters in that story that she interacts with, and you get to see how, depending on her state of mind, whether that's like a positive or negative interaction, how it affects those people. And just, that game gripped me because one, it's some of the best platforming in any game. But two, it was the first time that I felt a game like told a real human story that I played.
Yeah, yeah,
Because, like I said, I played a lot of mascot platformers or like Skyrim. Get to hear about people being shot by an arrow in the knee all the time. That's not like a real thing that happens anymore. And even like Assassin's Creed, it's like, oh, this is cool history, but it's all like fantasy and also
yeah,
still not realistic and like in the plot and stuff like that. And it's not that those people, it's not that making games that don't focus on storytelling is bad, but it's a part that can be just so wonderful and so good. Just
yeah,
like, some games are like, we want to focus on exploration, we want to focus on just like tight combat. Like, you can focus on storytelling, or you can say, in addition to these other things, we also want to tell a great story. Um, Not every game needs to be like that, but the ones that are like phenomenal, and it's really
yeah,
great. Um, so yeah,
yeah,
stories
and
and games are great.
yeah, and I agree with you when you can meld those two, when you can meld gameplay and story so perfectly, that's when you got that secret sauce.
Yeah.
Like you are when you mess up in Celeste, you're like, oh, like you feel like this is herself failing, but I'm going to try again. And thanks to the game, you get back into it. You get right back into
Yes.
it and you do it.
You get right
And
back.
and it melds perfectly together. So
Yes.
when you can do that, I love that. I love when you can figure that out. And that's the
Mhm.
thing is, you can't do that in a movie. I can
Right.
sit back and I
Right.
can view that. I can watch that and I can cry to that and I can feel just through the screen. But when I am literally with my hands sweating because I'm trying to overcome this thing, and then once I overcome it and you get to the next beat, and then that
Mhm.
character is reacting to what you as the player just did with them, that's when you get that key thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't just watch someone going through a difficult time overcome it. It's like you
Right.
are overcoming it. Like Celeste is a hard game, and climbing that mountain is not only hard for Madeline, but it is hard for you. And
Yeah.
so like getting to the top is like a huge achievement. So you get sucked into the experience, and assuming the developers like did a good job of integrating the story into the gameplay and into the and that whole thing, and you get brought in right with it. So which is why God of War for me is also just such a phenomenal game in terms of storytelling, because for one, the single shot camera, the no cuts camera, and the
Oh
way it
yeah.
fades just seamlessly in and out of cutscenes, um never broke the immersion for me
No.
like other games do. Like I
Yeah.
stayed so immersed in it, and it just felt wonderful, which is I think a great way that games can say there are better ways for our medium to do cut scenes, right? There's a better way for our medium to do, yeah, structured sections of dialogue and like visuals.
Right.
And doing that no cut thing really helped you feel like you're still playing the game,
Right.
even though you're not technically controlling the camera or like Kratos at that moment, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So, and another thing I was thinking about, because I think some of the best games I've played over this past year in terms of storytelling, and maybe all of the best games I've played in terms of storytelling, always seem to focus more on the story of the characters rather than the story of the plot,
Mhm.
which is really, really nice because when you have a game that has like a main quest line and then like side quest lines, when you move away from the main quest line, it's nice that the story is still being told,
Right. Right.
which is like such a huge thing with, I don't know, open world games. And it's like, I think people joke about the Legend of Breath of the Wild a lot. They're like, Princess Zelda is like, "Help me, Link, I'm barely holding on." And then it's like cuts to like Link doing whatever random stuff, like driving a motorbike down a mountain or doing some kind of weird
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
explosion trick to like go flying through the air or shield surfing. And it's like that does break the immersion quite a bit in terms of
Right.
story when it's just like, yes, there's this very, very important thing that you need to go do, but you just do it whenever you want.
Right, right. And I agree with that 100%. And it's one of those things where I think that's where the evolution of video game storytelling has come, where it has focused a lot more on the characters
Yeah.
and less on in regards to just the overall plot. Like I can play Judgment, not to say that Judgment's trying to be this huge big thing, but there's this one story that's happening between your character and this greater story. But then you can go off and you have to help this pop star from
Mhm.
not getting beat up by these guys or whatever, or you have to help these people go find the credit card. Like it has nothing to do and help with the character of the plot, or
Mhm.
it doesn't help with your character. It's just a side thing, and it does take you out of it. Again, it's not that Judgment's trying to do that, but when games are trying to be that and they don't get that part right, that's when it affects it. And you get
Yeah.
things like in The Last of Us. And The Last of Us is one of the games that I wrote down as the next one. And real quick before I even enter into that, I never grew up playing a lot of games. When I was younger, the PS1 was what we had. We had a Game Boy Color, and then came one moment where my parents were like, "No more games," and then we didn't play games for a very, very, very long time. And so once we started ramping back up, and then we got a PS3 out of nowhere, it was one
Mhm.
of those where I remember my uncle. We were talking about it because he had a PS3, and he was like, "Oh, you should play Uncharted. I have one, two, and three." And then that's I'll be honest, that was the moment when I was like, "Oh my goodness, there's other games that have good storytelling, like Metal
Mhm.
Gear." That and again, it's because I had that humongous gap in between. If I played anything before that, it was just multiplayer games with my siblings because we had a Wii or whatever. But
Sure.
evolving from that to The Last of Us, and I remember I didn't even know what the game was. It's not like I in my mind I was like Naughty Dog is the best of the best right now. Like I wasn't too cognizant of all the deep things regarding the video game industry at that moment. I just heard people saying it was really good online. And so I was like, you know what? I work at Whataburger. I don't make a lot of money. I can't buy it, but I'm going to rent it from Redbox
Mhm.
and I'm going to beat this game in a day. And I did. And it was one of those things where sitting there from beginning and you haven't played The Last of Us. I'm sure a
No.
lot of people haven't played The Last of Us,
Yeah.
but when from the beginning of that game all the way to the end, it is one of those journeys that you go on. And I, in that moment, was like, it was one of those things where I was like, oh my goodness, like they've made it.
Mhm.
Like this is made it. Like this is the next step. This is the Metal Gear of now that build off of the success of Metal Gear, and this is the next tier that everyone needs to go off of. And I remember I beat the game overnight. I didn't sleep all the way until the next day.
Mhm.
And I remember sitting there and I was legit crying at the end. And I was like, am I crying at a video game right now? What is going on? And
Mhm.
it was one of those where the acting was so on point and the music was so on point. And that's a very special experience I had just because of the fact that I just played that thing from beginning to end. I did not stop. I just did it. And The Last of Us is another one of those pillars for me personally, where I never knew that you can just keep going on with the story, or oh hey, there's that house. Let me go check to see if there's any ammo. You
Mhm.
go and looking through a drawer, there's a note, and you read the note, and you read the story of what's going on with someone that happened
Mhm.
there. And I'm like, and you feel for the people that were in that situation in that moment, and you're like, oh my God, like there is storytelling happening all around me, along with this one main storyline that I cannot keep my eyes off of because I'm
Mhm.
so fixated on. And so that's why, if you ask me, who are my favorite video game directors right now? Hideo Kojima, Neil Druckmann, like those
Yeah.
guys did it for me. And a lot of people will be like, everybody says that. And here's a reason why everybody says that, because they made it to that point. They
Yeah.
deserve to be at that point. And so I do love, and just building off of what you said in regards to Celeste, what's so great is that, and this has happened a lot with indie games, but I feel like sometimes indie games can be a lot like indie music, to where to some people it's kind of like, that's too indie for me. And I think
Yeah.
Celeste was like kind of one of those steps in that realm to be like, ooh, we can really do something interesting with this medium, because
Yeah.
you don't compare indies and A games. It's always, and people love saying that there's A, double A, triple A, and people love saying there's I, double I, and triple I.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it's cool when you have that balance between the two a lot. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and, I know personally, I have seen a lot of indie games, like, take storytelling to, like, very cool levels and kind of what you're going off of. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot more that you could dig into of like, well, what exactly is an indie game? What's like a triple A? What's a double A? And it's like, look, like just met. I don't know. You could spend the time like trying to parse it out and like craft definitions, and then they still wouldn't like do a great job of it because it's constantly in lots of ways changing. Like a developer
right.
might have started off inning, but then they added like 20 people. Like Shovel Knight, right? It's like
Yeah.
I mean, they started out like as an indie team of like I think four, and now it's like they helped like publish a different developer's game.
Yeah.
So what are they now? What are they now? I
Yeah.
don't know. In
Are you
terms
talking
of
about Yacht Club
cyber,
games?
yeah, yeah, Yacht Cup games, and they helped with Cyber Shadow.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like there's just lots of opportunities, and even I think mostly we've talked about storytelling that's been very, I don't want to say in your face, but it's been very like direct storytelling. Like it's happening in front of you. But then we kind of got onto it with like The Last of Us, where like, hey, there was a note that you found and it had this, and like in it, and it made you feel some way or another. Um, but it's just not explicitly stated. I felt that actually Ghost of Tsushima did a lot of cool
Mm,
stuff in that regard
mm,
too. There are lots of times where you would like find different notes and like kind of piece together that the person that left this note is dead. Was kind of similar, I think, probably with
yeah.
Last of Us, and it's like you might have found a note and then you found like a different note from a different person, but then you eventually like just traveling, like if you take the like second to look around, you might see like there's a dead body over there, and I'm pretty sure it's the guy who wrote that note earlier. And like
Yeah.
there's times where like that brought like on emotional responses in me
Yeah.
like heavily. And that's really cool in its own right. But
Because you found that.
yeah,
You
because
you could
I
have
found
completely
that.
missed it.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And I took the time to read that note. I took the time to read a lot of the in that game specifically, the notes of the con. There's like some like lore guy or historian type guy who like is from Tsushima, but like hangs out with the con because he wants to just document stuff, and he talks a lot about the con's um I'm trying to remember actually what's Kotan Khan, right? So he talks about a lot about like the Khan's like tactics, the Khan's conversations with Jin's uncle, and it really like pulls out the picture of who Khan is as a character in ways that you don't get directly told to you through the game. So there's like a lot of rewarding feelings in regards to reading through that story yourself. Like we've talked a lot about the cinematic storytelling that is happening in games, but there's like a whole other like subset of like world building, lore built, like text driven
yeah.
uh storytelling that might not be as like emotional all the time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like it, because you have to like take the time out to like discover that stuff, it like tells the story of what's going on in the world, and it like just makes your appreciation for the game grow and grow and grow. And so two games, well, I mean, they're really from the same person, same kind of game, but two games like that immediately make me think of that are Bloodborne and Dark Souls.
Mm,
there's actually so much story that happens in those games or like in those worlds, and almost none, maybe like 10% is actually ever told to you, and everything
Yeah.
else is written in like item descriptions
Yeah.
and like piecing together different context clues as like, okay, so you met this person here and then they were here later and this is what they said. But if you read like the description for their armor that you can buy, that kind of like explains why that happened. And then also with those games, it's like there's so many different things that you can do in those interactions with people that could cause them to like be nice to you, to like be mean to you, to actually die because you weren't there to save them.
Right.
And it's like all this story that happens, like if you just played the game once through, didn't read any item description, you wouldn't know anything about that. And it's like, so for the people who just want to play the game for the gameplay and for the game mechanics, like that's all they had to do, and that's all they had to go through, and they got to have a fun time. But then you have all these people who are like, I really want to dig into this world. It's such a cool setting. You know, I love the game a lot. I'm intrigued by these interactions with these characters or these places that I have. And then you start going in and you start reading stuff and you build out like your knowledge of the history of that world over time through conversations with people, through watching Bati Vidya. I think that's the channel. But like lore channels on YouTube who like piece it together for you and tell you
Yeah.
the stories. I
Yeah.
couldn't remember the exact name, but there's like one Dark Souls like channel specifically that's really good. And it's incredible the stories that they're telling just in the background, and they don't even care if you take the time to read it. They're like, we're writing the story because we love it, and we think other people who take the time to like do it, will enjoy it too. Destiny 2 does a lot of that as well. Like it's easy just to jump in and be like, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm shooting a bunch of aliens and it's fun, having fun with my friends. But if you like take the time to read item descriptions, if you actually like really keep up with what's happening in the cutscenes that do happen or like the mission dialogues and stuff like that, there's so much like
Right.
universe lore that they've built out. And I will shout out a specific YouTube channel for that one. My name is Byf, which is BYF. I
Okay.
think fantastic videos piecing all of that together.
Nice.
Um, and so there's like multiple ways that games have been able to tell stories. And it's like you don't get that you don't get that anywhere else,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really cool.
And lastly, for with like the games that are favorite for me, and I want to say is Florence. If you have the chance, Florence, you can. I think it's on the Switch, but it's meant to be played on like a phone or a tablet,
Hmm.
and there's no speaking. It's just literally visual storytelling at its finest. And it's one of those where I remember listening to Greg Miller from Kind of Funny. He just talked about it one day. Like he was like, I just didn't know what this was. I played it and I was enthralled. And so I remember I had some time before I went to work. I bought it real quick, laid down, and I played it. And I played it within like an hour. And I was crying right next to my wife. I was like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
like, and she was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "When I'm gone, play this. Like, please play this because I just there's no way you can." And what it
Hmm.
did is it showed that you don't have to be shooting or like trying to figure out puzzles or anything like that. With like, you could just by living but going through an experience.
Hmm.
There's a story there. And another one, and I didn't put it as like my favorite, but one that came to my mind right now was there's a game called Bound at Bound, and you play as it's been a long time since I played it, but and I know it's on the PS4. But you play as this woman who's pregnant, and she's looking back on her life when she was younger, and when she's in this like this other fantasy world, she's this ballet, or she's a ballerina. My bad. And the way her movements when she's walking, she's dancing and like with the flow of the grass, and you're literally just going through this terrain, and it's just this
Hmm.
experience that you're just there experiencing. There's no shooting, there's not much there's not even puzzles. It's just you're in this experience and listening to the music and seeing this character dance and flow with the grass and can like combine with the way that they interact with certain areas, and it's so good. So when you combine those two, it doesn't always have to be written. It doesn't have to always be shown. It can be just an experience, and it's what you
Yeah.
feel outside of it. So that's what's really,
Yeah.
really special about video
Yeah.
games. Did you
For
want to
sure.
end off on the least favorite?
I don't know if I want to say least favorite. I think this is a weird thing to kind of
Disappointed?
like I think we can nitpick here, and you don't have to like nitpick entire games, but I think we could what we could talk about, and I'll start saying like maybe a good example of like things and like obviously there's games that just don't try, but like for the games that do try, things that maybe they do wrong that kind of breaks you out of the experience. So I will say that I actually started playing Horizon Zero Dawn
Let's
this week,
go.
which I am loving so far. I'm like almost instantly hooked. But
Oh no.
the very start of that game, just the very, very start just starts off
Yes.
so poorly in my
Yes.
mind.
Yes.
Like I know what they're trying to do. So for those who I don't know how much is spoilers. I don't think it's too many spoilers.
No.
So like Horizon Zero Dawn is like a game that's set in like the future, but it's like the future where there was some kind of apocalyptic event and now no one uses technology anymore. And so it's like everyone's tribal, but there's like remnants of a technological society that are still all around you.
Right.
And so it starts out and there's this, adult male guy and he is carrying around this little, baby girl on her back and you're just watching this cutscene as he like goes and explains the world to her in a
Yes.
way that's like this explanation isn't for her, obviously. It's for me.
It's telling,
And
not
it's like
showing.
yeah, it's telling. Like I feel like there were just so many other ways where they could have told those things through like environment or updated the script so that it actually felt like he was really talking to her, but for my benefit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's what they were going for. They were going for she's talking to her, but it's for the player's benefit. But it does
Right.
not come across like that because it's like you would not. I don't know. I don't talk to my kid that way, or not quite in that level of
Let
like
me explain to you the way
detail.
this world works.
I mean, yeah, because there's like simpler, babier versions of that stuff that you would probably do. Like,
Yeah.
fun fact, I have like a book, or I guess my daughter has a book that's like, what is it? Baby is a rocket scientist or something like that. And then
Nice.
it just like, this is a ball. Ball has,
Nice.
what is it? Not drift, but like resist. I don't know. But and it does like these very, very simple concepts and just like stages them in
Oh,
terms of
okay.
like science stuff on like page like this is a ball. Ball has airflow going around it. If you change the shape of the ball, the air pushes it up. And it's like,
Wow.
but he's like not describing the world lore to her in that
Right.
way.
Right.
And it's like, come on, like at least let me be the guy. Let me control the guy and start teaching me the game mechanics while he is explaining the stuff to her.
Right.
Right? It would feel so much more natural that way. You start introducing game mechanics earlier and getting people into the game because most of that would translate over once you start playing as Aloy anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, so but after that, once I actually started playing as Aloy, I'm like, okay, they're actually doing a much better job telling the story of this world through the different things like that she, has and can do. I'm like, okay, this is way better. And then like what I've played so far is like that was like the main misstep that I've seen, and everything else has been great in terms of storytelling. And so I'm like, okay, that was a really bad start.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a really bad start, but I think everything's coming up from there.
Yeah, the
So,
moment the doors open and you're into the world, that's when it all gets better. I completely mistook this assignment and I got really literal. Uh,
sure. Oh my gosh, I'm
I
so
literally
sorry. I'm so
put
sorry.
Sonic in the Black Knight.
Oh.
Man, I was so looking forward to that game. And I put Metroid Other M. I was
Oh
really looking for that
gosh.
game too. And then I
I mean,
literally put all the Resident Evil games because I don't like Resident Evil.
if you'd like to tell that tale, you can, Rob. I'm not going to
No,
hold you back.
no, I will say there's something that and I just kind of I want to do this in regards to all games. For me personally, we need to get creative with the way that you show off the intro mechanics of a game. and how you explain this world, your world. Because
Mhm.
I'm telling you right now, if there's a game that I go and literally maybe the first 2 hours is like, let's say I feel like I'm open and I go and another hour in, I get a prompt that shows, oh, this is how this is and this is how this works. I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm not going to play the game because you could have done it all at the beginning. And so
Mhm.
I do agree with you in regards to there's a certain way that you need to completely explain how stuff works, and that's game design. But I
Mhm.
will say, just in regards to this prompt, Metroid Other M, I will say I love the gameplay to that game. Like I know it's kind of wonky having to point the controller to the motion bar so you can go in first person view and you can look around and shoot as Samus. But the control that game was super fun. The story is the most Japanese weird story ever, and so that completely that dude completely
Yeah.
threw it all for me. So
Yeah. Can we take a quick sidebar and just talk about how every JRPG has you like, first thing, "Oh, there's a cat stuck up in a tree. Can you help me
ev-
get your cat?" And
every
then
time,
into the game, you're killing a god,
yeah.
right?
That's how they all
Like,
start.
that's how they all go. Except maybe I actually wanna give credit, I think, to Fire Emblem Awakening. I did. I've played part of that game, and that starts a little different, but it's like, you know, I don't know.
And that's why when we have games like Octopath Traveler, and then we have that next one that's coming out, Triangle Strategy.
Project, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I want to play those games so bad because they look so cool, but I already know that there's going to be this learning curve to it that I'm going to have to figure out. And that in and of itself, because it's a JRPG, and that's what JRPGs come with. It's just there's a learning curve to them, and I want to play them so badly, but I just can't because it's so difficult. And there's probably a good story behind it. I like Persona 5. I love Persona. I was so
Mhm.
into it. I love the story. Everything about it was great. But yeah, just man, those games. I feel like I'm going off topic in regards to JRPGs. But anyways, regarding our least favorite games, but
Sure. I mean, you can nitpick storytelling in, JRPGs, if you really want.
well, that's the thing is I don't have a problem in regards to storytelling.
Mhm.
It's just the fact that the gameplay is what hinders me because I
Sure.
have to learn.
Yeah.
There's sometimes where there's sometimes where I go and I want to play a game and I'm like I want to relax and I want
Mhm.
to like experience this great story and have fun playing. But I don't want to feel like I'm having to learn something. So
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah. I can get behind that. I think what game do I wanna nitpick? I almost wanna nitpick, like, every Western RPG in a sense. Not every
what?
Western RPG, but as a genre, like, I kinda wanna take a swing at, Skyrim, especially. Um,
Ooh, let's go.
just because I think that game really does wanna tell quite a few different stories. Like, to me, I think the game does attempt it's like it's something that it does wanna do, right? Because you have all the different dialogue options of what you can do. You have all the different storylines that are, like, significant things happen, but, hmm, I don't know. Make me care more about the things that are happening, I think,
Yeah.
somehow. I think it's almost like in no sense, it's like the plot, there's, all the little plots that are happening are just a way to move the gameplay forward and let you keep, like, progressing and getting, like, cool new gear and, like, leveling up and gaining, like, statuses and titles and abilities and stuff like that,
Right.
and so for that standpoint, I would say there are a lot of times where, like, Skyrim fell flat. There are plenty of moments where they do, like, subvert expectations and have like little plot twists that happen and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But for the most part, like, I mean, for the most part, that game is all about leveling up your character and like going around and doing whatever you want in a lot of senses.
Right.
So maybe it's like maybe it is hard to nitpick it from that sense because it's like, well, this is what this is like. But to me, I think that they do make an attempt with the dialogue choices and stuff like that. most of the times are meaningless or just like circle you back in the same menus. I would like to nitpick those.
Right.
Like make if you're going to like present options for dialogue, like make them meaningful, make them actually do something. Um, make me care more about these characters I'm interacting with.
Right. Right.
Is probably a big deal. Um, because there's so many characters, but like if you think about something like I know a lot of people actually give, I think, Outer Wilds prop or sorry, not Outer Wilds, Outer Worlds
Oh,
props
yeah.
for like some of the companion storylines that are in there. But the thing I always hear people talk about is like Mass Effect and just like the because there are a lot of different storylines you can do with all the different like possible crew members you have
Right.
and people like rave about those aspects of the game. In fact, like I don't even know what the actual plot to the game is because I just hear people talk about, oh, I romanced this person and killed this person instead because I hate them. And then it's like, like those relationships mean a lot and really kind of cause strong feelings in like the people that play those games.
Right. 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 Well, those watching, those listening, let us know in the comments, or you can tweet at us at Ambitious Casual. What are some of y'all's favorite games, and what are some of your least favorite games? And if you want to go into more details about what it is that you love about them, what is it that
Yeah.
didn't kind of rub you the right way in regards to the game, let us know. We would love to see that. Also, if you're a podcast listener, don't forget, and whatever podcast service that you're using, if you can rate the podcast, please rate it so that way the podcast can be bumped up to the top so that way people can find it much easier. And go ahead and share it on your social media feeds. If you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you use, go ahead and share this episode with your friends so
Hmm.
that way they can jump on, listen. Let's grow the viewership and the listening on these episodes. We appreciate y'all being with us and with another episode of the XP podcast level 15. We will have Austin back in the next one. Hopefully he doesn't get bitten by a shark. So fingers crossed that his vacation goes well. And Adam, do you have any last words you would like to tell the audience?
Oh, go play games, give games a shot. I think everyone has a game out there that they can enjoy and has great stories and play indies. Celeste is really good.
There you go. Couldn't have said it any better. Till next time, y'all. Peace out.
See ya.